He didn't choose her at first. He chose Naomi, the quiet one, the one who never needed to raise her voice to be heard, the one who listened before she spoke, the one who made Silas Carrington forget he was a CEO every time he looked at her. But love, it turns out, isn't always loud enough to drown out ambition or family. So when Naomi watched her own sister, Monique, kiss her fiancé on the cheek like it was always hers to take, when she heard her mother whisper that she wasn't built for his world, she didn't fight. She didn't beg. She walked away. But this story isn't about how Naomi lost him. It's about how she rose so gracefully. The man who let her go had to earn his way back with every step. Welcome to Mr. Charles' Stories. Tonight, you're about to witness a love that was quiet, then tested, then nearly broken, by betrayal, pride, and blood ties. But in the cracks, something unshakable formed. Before we go further, have you ever trusted someone so deeply only for them to believe lies whispered by your own family? Have you ever stayed silent because the pain was too loud to explain? If you've ever felt that, stay. Watch. This is your story too. Let's begin. Naomi Gresham had always been the kind of woman who made space beautiful, without making herself the center of it. She ran a boutique design studio out of a converted brownstone in Chicago's West Loop. Nothing flashy, just intention in every detail. Matte black finishes, soft lighting, earth tones that whispered instead of shouted. Clients came for her taste, but they stayed because of her stillness. In a world that praised noise, Naomi's calm stood out like luxury in a crowded room. So when Silas Carrington first walked through her door, she assumed he wouldn't stay long. He was the kind of man who moved with the weight of money. No ring, no assistant, no time for small talk. Dressed in navy cashmere and confidence, he stepped into her office like he already owned the air. Naomi greeted him with the same steady warmth she gave every new client. "You're early," she said, glancing at the clock on her wall. "Only by 3 minutes," he replied. She didn't smile. She nodded. "Coffee?" she asked. "No. Let's get straight to it." He slid a folder across her desk. Inside were blueprints, renderings, and a handwritten note at the top. That read, "Penthouse Lobby, Carrington Tower, launch, 6 months. Budget, unlimited. Expectation, high." She glanced up. Unlimited budget and high expectations. "I'm guessing you're not used to hearing no, not when I'm paying for brilliance. And what makes you think you'll find that here?" Silas paused. For the first time, he looked at her, not just around her office. "Your work speaks." Quietly, but powerfully, he said. "I figured it matched the kind of luxury I'm trying to deliver." Naomi leaned back. That was the first moment she felt the shift. The moment she realized he wasn't here to control. He was here to be surprised. And he would be. Their working relationship moved fast. Silas wasn't like other clients. He didn't hover, didn't second guess. He gave direction, but never insulted her craft. When Naomi walked him through mood boards, he listened. When she proposed an installation using reclaimed wood and layered lighting, he didn't ask for a cheaper option. He asked when it could be done. By the 3rd week, he'd started showing up without a driver. By the 6th, he brought her lunch without asking what she liked. "You seem like the kind of person who skips meals when focused," he said, placing a box of warm roasted vegetables and salmon on her desk. "I seem like the kind of person who works," she replied, not looking up from her sketches. He smirked. "And does it well." The first time they talked about anything beyond the project, it was late. Naomi was adjusting lighting samples in the showroom when the power flickered. It came back in seconds, but she sighed anyway. "Faulty wiring?" "No," she said. "This building's old, like most things worth keeping." Silas watched her from across the room. "You always sound like that," he said. "Like what?" "Like you're designing the world with your words too." She turned slowly. "You always talk like a man who's used to being listened to." "Are you listening?" "I hear you." He took a step closer. "There's a difference." Naomi didn't step back. She never did. 3 months into the project, He invited her to the rooftop of Carrington Tower. It was still under construction. Steel beams exposed, no press, no glass railings. She climbed the stairs herself. When she reached the top, the wind hit her cheeks, sharp and cold. The skyline stretched around them like a secret only the city could keep. Silas stood near the edge, looking out. "I know you hate fanfare," he said as she approached. "So, I figured this was the only place where what I want to say will land properly." Naomi raised a brow. "And what do you want to say?" He turned, stepped toward her, then stopped a foot away. "You're not loud, Naomi, but everything in me listens when you speak." Silas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black box. Her chest stilled. He opened it. The ring wasn't massive. It wasn't even new. It looked like something with history. A delicate gold band with a vintage diamond that shimmered only when the light touched it right. "I want you to be with me," he said. "Not because you fit the image, not because it's convenient, but because when I look ahead at my life, empty success isn't what I see anymore." Naomi blinked slowly. She didn't speak, didn't cry. Instead, she whispered, "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I've never been more." And there, on the unfinished rooftop of a building she helped bring to life, Naomi said yes. She told no one for a week. Not because she was hiding, but because for once, she wanted to keep something beautiful without asking for anyone else's permission. But life doesn't let joy sit quiet for long. Not when you have a sister like Monique. Not when you have a mother like Lucinda. Naomi sat across from her mother in a quiet brunch cafe in Lincoln Park, twirling a silver spoon around her half-full cup of tea. She hadn't wanted to tell her family this way, but she figured doing it in public would cut the drama in half. "I said yes," she told Lucinda, her voice calm. "Silas asked me to marry him." Lucinda didn't react immediately. She set her fork down beside her untouched omelette, then reached for her purse to pull out a napkin. She dabbed her lips, nothing was there, and gave Naomi a tight-lipped smile. "Is that so?" Naomi nodded. "Yes. Well," Lucinda said, folding her hands on the table. "He's a very ambitious man, a little cold but attractive enough. Certainly a step up." "A step up from what?" Naomi asked. Lucinda didn't answer. Naomi bit the inside of her cheek, let the silence sit between them like an unwelcome guest. She wasn't surprised, but she was tired. "I wanted you to hear it from me," Naomi said, finishing her tea. "We're not planning anything big, just a small ceremony, full probably, nothing fancy." Lucinda raised a brow. "Nothing fancy? You're marrying a Carrington." Naomi stiffened. "I'm marrying Silas." Her mother didn't correct her. But she didn't agree either. 2 days later, Naomi shared the news with her younger sister, Monique. They met outside Naomi's design studio. Monique had texted earlier that she was in the area and could spare 15 minutes. She pulled up in a leased white Jaguar, sunglasses too big for the overcast day, heels clicking across the sidewalk like she was walking a runway. Naomi waved her inside, but Monique shook her head and leaned against the hood of her car. "I'm on my way to a gallery opening," she said. "Thought I'd swing by and see what this space of yours looks like." Naomi ignored the condescension. "I'm engaged." Monique tilted her head. "To who?" Naomi paused. "Silas." Monique's reaction was too controlled. "Oh, him?" Naomi narrowed her eyes. "You've met?" "At an art gala," Monique said casually, adjusting her sunglasses. "I didn't know you two were serious." Naomi folded her arms. "We are." Monique smiled, a perfect, glossy, unreadable smile. "Good for you." It was too sweet, too fast. Naomi wanted to let it go. She always did. Monique's flair for competition, for drama, had never been Naomi's speed. She thought growing up would ease the rivalry. She thought life would soften their mother's favoritism. She thought love would be something sacred, something no one could touch. She thought wrong. Over the next several weeks, Naomi focused on the wedding plans with measured optimism. Nothing excessive, just intention behind every detail. exactly how she'd always lived. They picked a venue just outside the city, an elegant garden estate with high windows and tall oaks. Naomi chose soft cream linens, ivory florals, and a playlist of jazz classics Silas liked to play in his penthouse. Silas, for his part, remained steady. He helped where she asked, and didn't question when she didn't. He didn't rush her. He didn't overwhelm her. In many ways, she felt safe with him. But in other ways, she couldn't shake the feeling someone, was circling. The week before the engagement party, Naomi received a package at her studio. Inside was a note card with no signature. Just a typed line, "Be careful who you let close. Some don't come to celebrate." She turned the card over, blank. She asked the receptionist who delivered it. No one saw. There was no return address. She didn't mention it to Silas. Instead, she locked it in her desk drawer and kept planning. The day of the engagement party arrived. The venue glowed. Guests trickled in. Clients, friends, distant cousins. Silas wore a tailored grey suit. Naomi chose a champagne-toned dress, simple and clean, like her. She'd just started to relax when Monique walked in. Naomi felt her presence before she saw her. The heels, the hush that followed her entry, the way conversation slowed. She wore red. A sharp-fitted dress with a slit too high for the occasion and confidence that bordered on provocation. Her dark curls were pinned perfectly. Her lips matched the dress. Naomi blinked once, twice, then turned to Silas. He had gone still. Monique walked up, her smile sweet and predatory. "Silas," she purred, leaning in to kiss his cheek, close to the mouth. "Didn't expect to see you here." Naomi watched his face. He recovered quickly. "Monique." Naomi's throat tightened. She didn't say anything then. Didn't create a scene. But later, as she moved through the party, thanking guests, posing for photos, she caught sight of Monique again. This time, whispering with Lucinda near the bar. "She's not ready for that world," Lucinda said, her voice low but clear. Monique smirked. "I'll help him realize it." Naomi didn't confront them. She didn't scream or cry. She just walked to the restroom, locked the door, and looked at herself in the mirror. She adjusted her earrings, and she said out loud, "Just once, not everything beautiful is protected." After the party, Naomi asked Silas if anything was wrong. He said, "No." But something in his voice had shifted. Naomi hadn't expected silence to feel this loud. 3 days had passed since the engagement party. Silas hadn't called. Not unusual for most couples, but for them, it was a shift. They'd gone from late-night voice notes and morning check-ins to nothing. No fights, no confrontation, just space, cold and unannounced. She gave it time, hoping maybe he was overwhelmed with work. But by the 4th day, she walked into her studio early and found herself staring at the phone, willing it to ring. It didn't. Across town, Monique sat in her favorite rooftop cafe, legs crossed, sunglasses perched. On her head, speaking into her phone like she hadn't just detonated a quiet bomb. "He hasn't called her since the party," she told Lucinda. "I told you." "He's doubting it now." Lucinda's voice crackled through the speaker. "Men like him need direction. He's not interested in homegrown comfort once the lights come on." Monique stirred her iced latte. "She doesn't know how to hold a man like him. He needs someone visible, someone who commands space." "You," Monique smiled. "Exactly." Meanwhile, Naomi walked into her mother's house that evening after receiving a vague text. "Can you stop by? We need to talk." The kitchen smelled like lavender and lemon cleaner, but there was no warmth in it. Lucinda sat at the table with a glass of wine, already halfway down. "You wanted to see me?" Naomi asked. Lucinda gestured to the seat across from her. "You look tired." Naomi stayed standing. "Is this about Silas?" Lucinda sipped. "It's about your future." Naomi's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask for career advice." This isn't about your career, Naomi. It's about your positioning. Naomi frowned. Positioning? Lucinda tilted her head, like she was explaining something to a child. Do you understand what it means to be with a man like him? It's not just about love. It's about optics, influence, standing. I'm not trying to climb anything. Lucinda leaned back. That's your problem. Naomi swallowed hard. What are you saying? Her mother set the glass down, perfectly centered on a coaster. Monique understands power. You've always been the quiet one, the modest one. But modesty doesn't win in the real world. Naomi's throat went dry. Are you seriously suggesting? I'm saying, if you want to keep him, act like you belong with him. Naomi walked out without another word. By the time she got back to her apartment, her chest felt tight. She sank into the couch, eyes blurry with thoughts she couldn't sort. It wasn't just the party. It was Monique's smug expression, the way Lucinda kept treating love like a business transaction. The pause in Silas's eyes when he saw her sister walk in. Naomi had built her whole life on stillness, on grace, on letting her work and her love speak for themselves. But maybe, just maybe, no one heard quiet anymore. The next day Silas called. He apologized for being distant, claimed he was buried in meetings and launch events. Naomi nodded through the call, her voice gentle but guarded. Is something wrong? She finally asked. No, he said too quickly. Not at all. Okay, I'll come by tomorrow evening. We'll go over the registry. She forced a smile. Sure. When the call ended, she stared at the black screen for several seconds, her hand still gripping the phone. She didn't believe him. Not entirely. Monique, meanwhile, wasn't idle. She visited Carrington Tower under the pretense of requesting design consultation for one of her gallery friends. But the front desk manager, new and easily impressed, granted her elevator access. She showed up on the executive floor like she belonged. Silas looked up from his desk, confused but polite. Monique? She smiled. I was nearby, thought I'd stop in. He stood, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. You need something? She stepped closer. I wanted to apologize if I caused tension at the party. I didn't mean to make Naomi uncomfortable. He raised a brow. Did you? Monique tilted her head. I care about her. She's my sister. I just worry. About? She lowered her voice. She's not built for this world, Silas. You know that. He stiffened. She means well, but she doesn't understand visibility, pressure, how to carry a brand, a presence. I know you need more than love in your world. Silas said nothing. He sat back down. Monique lingered. I could help, she said quietly. You and I both know what it takes to stand in the light. That night, Silas didn't show up. No text. No call. Naomi waited until 11 p.m., then turned off her porch light and went to bed in silence. Naomi didn't ask questions the next morning. She didn't call, didn't text. She just sat in her kitchen, her tea untouched, phone turned face down on the counter. There was no emergency, no explanation. Silas didn't come, and the silence after that, longer, colder, said everything. She got ready, went to the studio, and kept her head down. She answered emails, met with clients, reviewed floor plans, but nothing touched her, because something in her had gone quiet in a different way. This wasn't stillness, it was detachment. That afternoon she received a call from Terry, one of her assistant designers. Hey Naomi, Terry said cautiously. I didn't want to bug you, but I saw something weird on social. I figured you'd rather hear it from me than stumble into it. Naomi's stomach flipped. What did you see? There's this account that posts photos from local events, like galas, charity mixers. They tagged Silas with Monique last night. Looked like some kind of investor gathering. Naomi blinked. Last night? Terry hesitated. Yeah. They were standing kind of close. Nothing scandalous. Just, it didn't look like business. Naomi opened her laptop with slow, deliberate fingers. She didn't need to search long. There it was, a photo. Silas in a dark, tailored suit. Monique next to him in a gold silk dress, fitted, bold, confident. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, her face turned up toward him in what looked like a private smile. The caption read, CEO Silas Carrington makes an unexpected appearance with rising art entrepreneur Monique Gresham. A new Chicago power duo. Naomi didn't feel rage. She didn't even feel pain. She felt confirmation. She left the studio early and drove. Not to confront Monique. Not yet. She parked outside Lucinda's house. Her mother answered in her usual pressed ivory blouse, holding a glass of white wine like it was part of her arm. "Naomi," she said without warmth, "I wasn't expecting you." Naomi stepped inside. "I'm not here to stay long." Lucinda raised a brow. "Then say what you need to say." Naomi walked to the center of the living room. "Did you encourage Monique to pursue Silas?" Lucinda didn't blink. "I advised her to position herself well." "You mean, with my fiancé?" "Naomi," Lucinda said slowly, "you're a smart girl, but you've always lacked presence. Monique may be bold, but she understands alignment. If Silas sees that, if he responds to that, maybe you should examine why." Naomi's voice dropped. "You helped her steal him." Lucinda sipped her wine. "I helped both of you become who you are. What you do with it is your choice." Naomi stepped back, shaking her head. "You never loved me, did you?" Her mother scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. I raised you to survive. You just chose silence when the world asked for noise." Naomi didn't argue. She left the house with one thought, repeating, "I'm done seeking shelter from people who build storms." That night, she packed a small overnight bag. She booked a hotel in River North. She needed air. Space. She didn't tell Silas. He texted the next morning. "Can we talk? I owe you honesty." She stared at the message. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. "I'll meet you at the penthouse. 6 p.m. The penthouse hadn't changed. Still minimal, masculine, modern. But the air inside was different. Silas stood near the window when she entered. He turned slowly. "Thank you for coming." Naomi said nothing. She walked in and set her purse down. "I didn't lie to you," he said. "But I didn't stop things I should have." She folded her arms. "She came to my office, said she wanted to apologize. She started showing up at events, always in public spaces. I didn't think it meant anything." "But it did," Naomi said quietly. Silas didn't argue. "She made herself useful," he said. "She filled in spaces where you weren't." Naomi's eyes narrowed. "Where I wasn't what?" He swallowed. "Visible, that word. Again." She nodded slowly. "So, because I didn't flaunt our relationship, you assumed I didn't fit?" I got confused. Naomi stepped closer, voice steady. "No. You got weak. You let my sister use you, and you let my mother convince you I wasn't enough." Silas looked down. "I'm sorry. That's not enough. I know." Naomi walked to the door. "I loved you," she said, her voice low. "But I won't beg to be chosen twice." She left before he could answer. Monique called the next day. Naomi didn't answer. She sent a voice message instead. "I hope it was worth it." What would you do if your own mother and sister teamed up to take the one person you thought was your future? Have you ever felt overlooked, not because you lacked value, but because you refused to compete for attention? Naomi stayed quiet, while others schemed loud. But silence doesn't mean weakness. Would you have walked away? Or fought back? Tell us in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by someone close and chose peace over revenge? Like, share, and subscribe if Naomi's strength resonates with you. Your story might help someone else heal. Naomi didn't break down after she left the penthouse. She didn't scream in the hotel elevator. Didn't cry in the back of the Uber that drove her to the riverfront. Instead, she walked, block after block, past couples holding hands, Past window displays of wedding dresses and anniversary specials, past flower shops and boutique stores filled with everything soft and romantic. She kept walking until her feet hurt. Because what do you do when your own blood confirms every quiet fear you were too proud to speak? She gave them space. Her mother, her sister, even Silas. She gave all of them space to be better. And they filled it with betrayal. The public unraveling began sooner than she expected. A week after she walked out, Naomi's phone buzzed non-stop. Missed calls, messages, screenshots, news alerts. She muted it all until she saw her name trending on a blog post she never followed. From designer to discarded, Naomi Gresham left behind as sister Monique steps into CEO spotlight. The article featured side-by-side photos of Naomi and Monique. Naomi's was a candid shot from a press event 6 months ago, head down, no makeup, sketchbook in hand. Monique's was from that fundraiser. Glowing, styled, standing close to Silas. The piece speculated on a private split, praised Monique for her savvy presence and adaptability, and questioned Naomi's ability to handle high society expectations. There were quotes, anonymous sources, even a line claiming Silas had been nudged toward a more compatible match by inner circle influences. She knew what that meant. Lucinda. Naomi sat in her studio that evening, staring at her work table but seeing nothing. Terry, her assistant, hovered in the doorway. "Do you want me to turn off comments?" she asked gently. Naomi nodded. Terry hesitated. "Naomi, you okay?" Naomi looked up. Her eyes weren't red. They weren't even wet. "I'm not okay," she said. "But I will be." The next day, she showed up to work in all black. Not out of mourning, but clarity. She pulled the team into a short meeting. "I know what's online," she said calmly. "Ignore it. We don't build from gossip. We build from vision." Then she pointed at the board where her latest project was sketched. "Let's finish what we started." No one questioned her. They didn't need to. Meanwhile, Monique was reveling in the attention. She'd started giving interviews, small, subtle ones. She didn't name Naomi directly, but the subtext was loud. "I believe relationships are about chemistry and alignment," she told one outlet. "Not all connections are meant to last." When asked about Silas, she smiled coyly. "We support each other, in business and in life. The rest is ours." She wore Naomi's silence like a crown, used it as proof that she'd won. What she didn't realize was that Naomi wasn't quiet because she was weak. She was quiet because she was focused. Silas sent flowers 2 days later. A simple white bouquet with a handwritten card. "You were always the real thing. I see that now. S." Naomi placed the flowers in the back hallway, next to the trash bins. The final blow came in the form of a joint appearance. Silas and Monique were spotted at the groundbreaking ceremony for a new Carrington property. Photos. Her in a cream suit, him in dark navy. Smiles coordinated. Cameras invited. To the world, it looked like they were together, but Naomi knew better. Silas wasn't holding Monique's hand. He was holding a distraction. That night, Naomi sat on her rooftop. The Chicago skyline blinked gently around her. She sipped tea from the same mug Silas once bought her. Black, ceramic, etched with the phrase, "Quiet isn't empty. It's full of answers." She thought about deleting it, throwing it off the ledge, breaking it against the brick wall behind her. Instead, she set it down. She opened her laptop, created a new folder. New York studio, vision deck. It was time. Naomi had never moved out of impulse. She moved with reason, with vision. And when something no longer served her peace, she stepped away. Not loudly, but completely. So when the Carrington scandal turned from gossip into a media trend, she didn't defend herself. She didn't issue statements. She didn't ask for fairness. She booked a one-way flight to New York. She told no one, not her staff, not her neighbors, not her friends, not even her father, who had passed 5 years ago, but who she still whispered to in the quiet of her thoughts. She would wrap things up in Chicago over the next month, finalize contracts, hand off clients, keep her name clean, her head high, and her eyes forward. Brooklyn would be the reset, not to hide, but to build again. This time, with no one to betray her, except herself. Monique, on the other hand, was starting to feel the heat. The media had turned friendly. Until it didn't. Blogs that once hailed her as a bold new partner began raising questions. Timeline confusion. Was Monique Gresham already seeing Silas Carrington before his public split? Sources say Naomi was blindsided. Is this another social climber story? Where is Naomi Gresham now? The real designer behind the penthouse vision speaks only through her work. The last one stung Monique the most, because Naomi hadn't spoken a word. Yet her silence was commanding more dignity than Monique's perfectly rehearsed sound bites. Silas didn't speak either. In meetings, he was sharp but detached. When his assistant handed him articles, he flipped through them and said, "File it." At a board dinner, a long-time investor leaned toward him and asked, "This woman you're parading around, she the real thing?" Silas didn't answer. But that night, he drove past Naomi's studio. Lights off, door locked. He didn't stop, just kept driving. Right past everything he gave away too easily. Naomi sat on her hotel bed that same night, cross-legged, reviewing rental listings in Brooklyn. She wasn't looking for luxury. She wanted sunlight, hardwood floors, a space with character and silence. She paused at a small loft in Fort Greene. Exposed brick, street-facing windows, walking distance from a few promising design co-ops. She sent an inquiry. 3 hours later, the landlord replied, "Available. No credit checks needed. Let's talk." Naomi closed her laptop. It was happening. The next morning, she walked into her studio early and called a team meeting. Terry looked surprised. "Is something wrong?" Naomi smiled. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right." She took a breath. "I'm relocating. New York. I'll keep the studio name, but I'm setting up a second home base. This chapter in Chicago is closing for me." Silence. Then one of the junior designers spoke up. "You okay?" Naomi nodded. "I'm more than okay. I'm choosing myself. That's always the right choice." Terry blinked back, sudden tears. "We'll miss you." Naomi smiled. "I'm not disappearing. I'm expanding. There's a difference." 2 days later, a final article dropped. One that even Monique didn't see coming. Silas Carrington reportedly distancing himself from Monique Gresham. It was never what they thought, anonymous sources. Speculation. Whispers that Silas hadn't spoken Naomi's name, but still kept a sketch of her design in his office drawer. That Monique had begun attending events alone. That Carrington's PR team had been told to avoid romantic branding. Monique's calls to Silas went unanswered. She showed up to his office. The receptionist said he was in a meeting. She waited 2 hours. He never came out. Monique stared at the marble lobby wall and finally understood. This wasn't a pause. It was the end. Naomi received a delivery the next evening at her hotel. A white envelope. No sender. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, "You were always the real choice. I just didn't know how to protect what was already perfect." She folded the paper once, then again, slid it into her purse without a word. She didn't need closure. She needed freedom. And this time, she wasn't asking for it. She was taking it. Naomi didn't cry on the flight to New York. She didn't need to. She'd done her grieving in silence, walking through familiar Chicago streets with a straight spine and a packed heart. Now, 30,000 feet in the air, watching clouds drift by the window, she felt only one thing, light, not because she had healed, but because she had finally let go. Brooklyn welcomed her with its usual blend of noise and intention. The apartment was smaller than her place back home, but it had charm. Tall windows, warm floors, a view of the neighborhood trees that turned amber in the late afternoon. She unpacked slowly, placing things where they felt like they belonged, not where they had always been. Her design books, her sketchpads, her tea collection. She left the ring in a drawer. It wasn't a reminder, it was a lesson. The next morning, she walked into the small studio space she'd leased above a bookstore in Fort Greene. It wasn't fancy, just enough for a table, a wallboard, and a shelf lined with materials she hand-picked from the design district. She taped a note on the wall. "No one else gets to narrate my story." Then she picked up her pencil, opened her sketchpad, and started her first concept. By the second week, she had her first local client, an older couple, retired artists. They wanted to turn their brownstone basement into a reading room for their grandchildren. Naomi listened carefully, took notes, and smiled when the woman said, "You're quiet, but I feel like you see everything." She did. She always had. The world just hadn't respected quiet until now. Back in Chicago, Monique was unraveling. She had gone from being the next big thing to a footnote in stories no one cared to follow anymore. Silas had completely distanced himself. No dinners, no statements, not even a public acknowledgement that anything had ever happened between them. Lucinda tried to salvage the image, but even she was tired. Money wasn't flowing in like before. The family name didn't carry the weight it used to, and Naomi's silence had become too loud to ignore. Naomi received a call from Lucinda one evening. She let it go to voicemail. Her mother's voice was tight, controlled, not apologetic. "You may think distance proves strength, Naomi, but one day you'll look back and realize family still matters." Naomi deleted the message. Family mattered, but boundaries mattered more. Late one night, Naomi sat on the floor of her apartment, sipping peppermint tea, wrapped in a sweater she'd had since college. She opened her laptop and checked her inbox. An email stood out. Subject: Design Feature Request. Urban Interiors NYC. A journalist had seen her work online and wanted to do a short piece on her minimalist approach to healing spaces. Healing spaces. She smiled at the phrase. She wasn't healed yet, but she was building toward it, and her work reflected that. Still, quiet, intentional. She hadn't thought of the wedding in days, until she found the invitation while cleaning out her laptop files. Cream background, silver embossed names. Naomi Gresham and Silas Carrington, September the 18th. It had been printed. Ready, never mailed. She stared at it for a moment, then hovered her cursor over the file. Delete. It was just a click, but it felt like a ceremony. Silas, meanwhile, sat alone in his penthouse. No Monique. No Naomi. No press. No distractions. He stared at the wine Naomi once picked for their engagement dinner. It had collected dust, just like the chair she used to sit in, sketching silently while he worked late. He picked up his phone. Typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, he sent it. "I hope you're doing okay." No name, no signature. Just that. Naomi read it hours later. She didn't reply, but she didn't block him either. She simply turned off her phone, poured another cup of tea, and went back to designing. Naomi's studio began to bloom long before the flowers arrived. The article in Urban Interiors NYC dropped on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday, her inbox was full. Designers wanted to collaborate. Clients wanted consultations. Even a boutique hotel in Soho asked if she'd consider a lobby redesign. They weren't drawn to hype. They were drawn to her energy. Unbothered, focused, calm in a city that never slowed down. She hadn't posted about Silas, never responded to the headlines, never wrote a single caption that hinted at the scandal. And that's what made her story even more powerful. She was building while they were unraveling. Back in Chicago, Monique faced the mirror without her usual armor. No lashes, no gloss, no headlines to pose for. The silence was worse than the criticism. No more calls from PR firms, no more invitations to art galas. The world had moved on. Silas had moved on. Worse, He never even acknowledged her as a former partner. He left her out of the narrative completely, like she never existed. She tried to control the spin, but the damage was done. Naomi didn't lift a finger. Still, she had won. Lucinda tried reaching Naomi again. She called once, twice, left a message the third time. This one was different. Less pride, more need. You've made your point, Naomi, but this is still your family. You can't ignore blood forever. Naomi didn't answer. She played the message once, then forwarded it to an empty audio file folder labeled Unfinished Conversations. Because not everything broken needed repair. Some things just needed distance. That Friday, Naomi stood at the entrance of the Soho hotel lobby with her client. It needs warmth, the woman said. People walk in and feel impressed, but not welcome. Naomi nodded. You don't need more chandeliers. You need more honesty. The woman blinked. Honesty? Naomi smiled. Spaces are like people. Some try too hard to impress. Others make you feel safe without speaking. That's what you want. By the end of the meeting, she had the contract. Later that evening, she took a walk to a nearby bookstore. She moved slowly through the aisles, fingertips grazing book spines, heart quieter than it had been in months. She picked up a novel she'd been too busy to read before the chaos. When she got to the counter, the clerk smiled. You're the designer in that article, right? Naomi paused. Yes. He handed her the bag. Cool story. Quiet power. I like that. She walked out with the book and a smile that finally reached her eyes. That night, she checked her messages. Silas hadn't followed up, but his first message still sat there, unread. She clicked it again. I hope you're doing okay. Just that. No pressure, no plea. Just the kind of message someone sends when they know they've lost the right to say more. She didn't delete it. She just let it sit. Some things didn't need closure. Some stories just needed peace. The next morning, she received a package at her studio. No name on the sender. Inside was a small black notebook. On the inside cover, in handwriting she recognized, it read, You changed the way I saw the world, and I let the world talk me out of seeing you. Silas. She closed the notebook. Didn't cry. Didn't smile. She placed it on her shelf between two design manuals. Not because she was holding on, but because she didn't need to erase the past to move forward. Across the city, Silas stood in front of his office window, watching cabs move through the Manhattan grid. He had everything, yet none of it felt grounded. He missed her stillness, missed the way she looked at blueprints like they were poems, missed the way she didn't fill the silence, but made it feel like home. But he knew now. Some mistakes can't be fixed with flowers, or messages, or notebooks. They had to be fixed with consistency, and time, and earned trust. Silas Carrington wasn't used to waiting. He was the man who made decisions before others even knew a choice was needed. The man who built skyscrapers on timelines others feared. The man who once watched Naomi's hands sketch on tracing paper and believed, for a brief moment, that maybe life didn't have to be loud to be worth something. And then he lost her. Not because she walked away, but because when it mattered, he stood still. It had been 4 months since he last saw her in person. 4 months since she looked him in the eye and said, I won't beg to be chosen twice. Those words played in his mind more than he cared to admit. On a grey morning in October, he stepped out of a board meeting in Midtown. The rain was soft, more mist than storm, but it soaked through his blazer quickly. His assistant followed with an umbrella. Sir, your driver. I'll walk. She blinked. You have another. I said I'll walk. Silas slipped his hands into his pockets and moved through the city. Not toward a client, not toward a deal. Toward her. Naomi had just finished a presentation at a boutique hotel when she saw him. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, walking down the sidewalk like he belonged nowhere in particular. He didn't look up at first, didn't search. He simply walked. Until something in him stilled, and their eyes met through the glass. Naomi didn't move. Neither did he. Minutes later, he stepped inside the lobby. She didn't speak. He didn't reach for her. He stopped 3 feet away and said, "I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to tell the truth." She tilted her head. "Then, speak." He nodded. "I was afraid. Of the world I came from. Of what they said you weren't. Of being with someone who didn't chase status." Naomi's arms stayed folded. "I thought quiet meant small," he continued. "But your silence. It wasn't small. It was strong. It scared me, because I couldn't control it." She said nothing. He added, "I didn't choose Monique. I settled into her noise when I lost your peace." Naomi's eyes didn't flinch. He took a step back. "I'll leave now." He turned, but before he reached the door, she called his name. He turned. Naomi looked straight at him and said, "Don't show up unannounced again. I don't need apologies, I need proof." Back at her studio that evening, Naomi placed her phone face up on the desk. No new messages. She didn't expect one. Instead, she opened her laptop and replied to an email from Architectural Digest. They wanted to feature her work, the New York loft, redesign, the hotel space, the children's reading room in Brooklyn that had gone viral on social media last week. The world had noticed her, not because she chased it, but because she no longer hid. Silas didn't call, but the next week she received a silent message from him, a donation to the Children's Art Center she supported in Harlem, under her name. No press, no signature, just action. Naomi watched from afar. One step, then another. He didn't text, didn't call, didn't push, just showed up where it mattered, with no spotlight. One afternoon, she visited a local cafe near her studio. She sat in the back, reviewing mock-ups, when the owner came over. "There's a man who stops in every Thursday," she said softly. "Never stays, buys tea, leaves a note." Naomi's brows lifted. "Note?" The woman smiled and handed her a folded piece of paper. It read, "Today, I respected your space. Tomorrow, I'll respect your silence. Every day after, I'll show you who I've become." Naomi folded the note and tucked it into her journal. She didn't smile, but she didn't cry either. She simply breathed. Deep, slow, whole. Naomi wasn't easily impressed. Not anymore. Not by words. Not by gestures that made headlines. And especially not by men who didn't show up when it counted. But something about Silas's silence lately. It didn't feel like evasion. It felt like respect. That was new. She didn't tell anyone about the cafe notes. Not even Terry, who'd become more than an assistant. A quiet source of friendship in a city where everyone talked too fast. Instead, she focused on her work, on her name, on the little studio above the bookstore that now had a waiting list stretching into next spring. Clients called her the architect of healing. And they weren't wrong. Because Naomi wasn't designing rooms. She was building back women like her. Spaces that held broken pieces without judgment. The Architectural Digest feature went live in late November. The photos were stunning. Soft light, clean palettes, lines that whispered grace instead of demanding attention. But the interview, that's what caught fire. She didn't mention Silas, didn't speak of betrayal or gossip. She only said, "Design has always been how I speak, when I'm not ready to explain myself. I don't need to be the loudest in the room. I just need to know who I am when no one's looking." The quote went viral, and with it came invitations Naomi once never imagined. Conferences, panels, brand collaborations. But she said no to most, because she wasn't chasing visibility. She was protecting peace. Meanwhile, Silas kept showing up quietly, never where she could see him directly, but always in ways that mattered. A small business grant sent to a Harlem youth art program, an anonymous bid on a silent auction that supported black female designers, even a 5-star review on Naomi's new book, written under the name Stillness Built. Naomi knew. She always knew. But she didn't rush toward it. If he wanted a second chance, He'd have to walk the long road without demanding a shortcut. One crisp morning, Naomi walked past the cafe again. The owner greeted her with a knowing smile. "He still comes," she said. "Even when it rains." Naomi nodded. "I know." This time, the note was different. Not a poem. Not a promise. Just a question. "Would you let me meet you in silence, if only to hear how your world sounds without me?" Naomi folded the paper and stood still for a long moment. That afternoon, she wrote a letter. Not to send, just to write. She sat by her window, pen in hand, truth steady in her chest. "Dear Silas, you weren't wrong for being afraid. We all are sometimes. But you were wrong to believe I needed to be more than I already was. More seen, more loud, more polished. What you didn't see is that love doesn't have to shine to be real. Sometimes it just needs to be held with both hands. Gently. I've healed in pieces, not perfectly, but fully. And I don't need to go back to who I was to forgive who you used to be. But forgiveness doesn't always mean return. Sometimes it's just peace. Still, I hear your silence now, and it no longer feels empty. Naomi." She placed the letter in her journal next to his final note. She didn't need to reply, because for the first time in a long time, she felt whole again. Without apology, without performance, without needing to be chosen. She had already chosen herself. The invitation came in a sleek white envelope. No over-the-top branding, no pushy email, just a handwritten note on thick paper, tucked inside a curated packet. We would be honored if Naomi Gresham would deliver the opening keynote. At the Future of Design Summit in Manhattan this February, Naomi stared at it for a moment, unreadable. Not because she wasn't ready, she was, but because this, a keynote, a stage, an audience that once wouldn't even return her emails, was something she used to dream about quietly. When Silas still walked through her door in a navy suit, asking for lamp finishes and mood boards, Terry noticed the stillness. "You gonna say yes?" Naomi looked up. "It's time." The event was 2 months away. A 3-day summit, panels, workshops, press coverage. Naomi was the opening speaker. It felt surreal. The night before her segment, she checked into the hotel alone. No entourage, no partner, no designer luggage, just her. She stood by the window that overlooked the venue's grand entrance. Cars pulled in and out below. Stylists, architects, media reps. She didn't know who else was speaking. She didn't care. Until Terry texted the next morning, right before hair and makeup arrived. "Are you okay?" Naomi replied, "Why?" Terry responded, "Silas Carrington is closing the summit on day 3. Naomi stared at the message. She took a breath, then another. Her hands didn't shake. Her chest didn't tighten, because she wasn't the same woman anymore. She wasn't preparing to speak for approval. She was standing for truth. She walked onto that stage with calm grace. The lights weren't too bright. The crowd wasn't too loud. She stepped behind the podium and smiled softly before she spoke. "For years I thought design was about impressing people, but then I realized it's about revealing people." She paused. "Your space tells the truth you're afraid to say. I design for the silences because that's where people live." The room was still. Her words floated, not forced. Each sentence landed like a hand resting gently on someone's back. By the end, she received a standing ovation. Not because she had performed, but because she had shown up as herself. Backstage, she sipped water quietly, shaking hands, thanking coordinators. When the crowd thinned, the event manager approached. "Naomi," he said, "Silas asked if he could send a private note to your green room." She nodded. "He doesn't need permission." The manager handed her a folded card. She waited until she was alone, opened it. "I sat in the back. I didn't deserve a front row seat, but I heard everything. You didn't say my name, but I heard your heart. Silas." She folded it once, slipped it into her coat pocket, and went on with her day. Later that evening, she stood in the hotel lobby waiting for her driver. The bar behind her buzzed with summit guests. She felt him before she saw him. Silas stepped forward, dressed in simple black, no entourage, no cameras. He kept his distance. Naomi turned slowly. "Did you mean it?" she asked softly. He didn't ask what. He knew. He nodded once. "All of it." She looked at him carefully. "Why now?" His voice was steady. "Because I had to learn how to lose you, to understand what I never earned to begin with." Naomi didn't move, didn't rush to close the gap between them. Instead, she asked, "What would you do differently?" Silas took a breath. "Listen more, defend you louder, and stay close, especially when others try to pull me away." She didn't say anything, but she didn't walk away either. Her driver pulled up. She stepped outside and opened the door, then turned back. "Day 3, she said. "I'll be in the back. Let's see if your words can stand next to mine." And then she left. Day 3, the closing ceremony. Silas Carrington's name was on every program, every screen, every seatback card. Closing keynote, reimagining legacy with Silas Carrington. Most attendees came expecting power, strategy, prestige. But Naomi, sitting in the back row dressed in charcoal slacks and a soft white blouse, expected none of those things. She expected truth, or nothing at all. The lights dimmed. A hush settled. Then Silas walked out. No security, no hype music. Just a man in a dark suit who looked less like a CEO and more like someone still learning how to breathe without a script. He stood still for a moment, scanning the room, but not looking for her. Naomi noticed, and respected it. Then he began. "For a long time I thought building a legacy meant building louder, taller, faster than everyone else." He paused. "But no one ever asked me who I was building it for." A murmur of interest rippled through the audience. Silas continued. "In the past year, I've watched something beautiful from a distance. A studio grow. A woman rise, without noise, without branding. Just clarity." Naomi shifted slightly in her seat. Not tense, just aware. She never needed validation. But I needed her to know I've changed, not to win her back, but to honor what I failed to protect. No name, no drama, just ownership. Silas glanced at the floor, then back at the crowd. "We spend so much time preparing for storms, we forget stillness needs structure too. I didn't have that, but now I'm building it, with no audience, no spotlight, and no promise of applause." He stepped away from the podium. Let the silence stretch. Then he simply said, "Thank you," and walked off stage. No pitch, no exit music, just an ending that felt like a beginning. Backstage was loud with praise, applause, handshake offers, business cards. But Silas wasn't there for any of it. He left through the side door and stood outside in the cold with his coat unbuttoned and his phone untouched. Naomi found him 10 minutes later. No words, just silence between them, soft like old fabric. Finally she said, "You spoke like someone who knows the cost now." "I do, and I'd rather build slow with you than fast with anyone else." Naomi looked at him, fully, without flinching. "I'm not looking for a savior." Silas met her eyes. "I'm not here to save. I'm here to serve. And if that only means watching you from the back row, I'll do it." Quietly. A beat passed. Then Naomi asked, "Are you hungry?" Silas blinked. "Right now?" She nodded. "There's a diner 2 blocks down. Low lights, no cameras." He took a breath, then smiled, small, steady. "I'll follow your lead." They walked slowly, no hands held, no promises made, but they walked together. And sometimes that's where healing begins, not in answers, but in quiet steps, side by side. What if the person who once broke your heart came back, not with excuses, but with growth? Have you ever watched someone you loved finally become the person you always knew they could be? Only after you walked away. Naomi didn't need apologies. She needed consistency. She didn't rush back. She listened, watched, and waited. On her own terms. Would you give someone a second chance if they showed up the right way? Too late? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, because quiet strength deserves to be heard. Naomi didn't call it a date. She didn't let herself name what was happening, not out of fear, but out of intention. Naming things too soon made people expect things too soon. And she had learned, quiet healing needs room to breathe. So when she and Silas walked into the corner diner that night, she didn't slide into a booth like a woman reuniting with an old flame. She sat down like a woman learning who this man was. Now, the server greeted them with menus and didn't flinch at the sight of Silas Carrington. It was that kind of place, the kind where no one cared about status, only how you treated the waitstaff. Silas ordered grilled salmon and rice. Naomi asked for butternut soup and wheat toast. They didn't fill the silence with small talk. Instead, they sipped water and looked around. Two people who used to know each other deeply, now choosing to meet each other again, this time without assumption. He broke the silence first. Your keynote? I've listened to it 3 times since. Naomi raised an eyebrow. I didn't know it was recorded. He nodded. It's everywhere. You're everywhere. She smiled, soft and restrained. That's not the goal. Then what is? She stirred her soup. Peace and purpose. If attention follows, I won't apologize, but I won't chase it either. Silas leaned back. I envy that. Naomi looked up. You could have it. I don't know if I've earned it. That's the thing about peace, she said quietly. You don't earn it. You protect it. The moment you try to control it, you've already lost it. He didn't respond right away, but she knew he heard her. After dinner, they stepped outside. The wind had a chill, but not enough to make her rush away. Silas walked her to the edge of the street, where the crosswalk blinked red. I'm not in a hurry, he said. Naomi glanced sideways. Good, because I'm not offering a destination. He smiled. Then I'll walk alongside. No map, no timeline. The light changed. They crossed together. The days that followed were quiet, not with silence, but with clarity. Silas didn't call. But every Friday, a new children's book arrived at the Harlem Center in Naomi's name, donated anonymously. She recognized the handwriting on the shipping slips. Same steady loops, same clean lines. Naomi didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her life was full now. Her studio busier than ever. Her team expanding. Her name climbing lists she used to only admire from afar. She was no longer trying to prove anything to anyone, not even herself. Then came the unexpected. A call from her aunt in Baltimore, the one who raised her part-time after her father died. The one who never took sides in the family tension. She's not well, the aunt said. Lucinda. Hospitals running tests. Something with her heart. Maybe more. Naomi didn't flinch. Does she want to see me? She hasn't asked. But she's been quiet. That's not normal for her. Naomi thanked her and hung up. She sat in the studio that evening, staring at her sketches. Terry stepped in. Long day? Naomi nodded. Something on your mind? Naomi hesitated. My mother's in the hospital. Terry blinked. Do you want to go see her? Naomi traced a pencil over a half-drawn line. I don't know. I've never visited someone I don't trust. Terry sat across from her. Then maybe go for yourself, not for her. Naomi breathed out slowly. And that night, she booked a train to Baltimore. Not because she owed Lucinda anything, but because peace also meant closure, and some doors needed to be closed in person. The train to Baltimore cut through silence. Naomi didn't bring work, didn't open her laptop, didn't answer the messages that stacked in her inbox. She sat by the window, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the blur of trees and telephone poles. Not looking forward, not looking back, just sitting with it. The years, the fractures, the sharp words spoken in polished kitchens by a woman who never believed softness was strength. And now, that woman was in a hospital bed. Time had a strange way of circling back, not to punish, but to pause. She arrived late afternoon. The hospital smelled like bleach and something else. Fear, maybe, or regret. Room 404. Lucinda lay propped against a pillow, IV in her hand, monitors tracing every breath. She didn't look frail. She looked still. Naomi stepped into the room and said nothing. Lucinda turned her head slowly. Their eyes met, and for the first time in years, neither of them blinked away. "I figured you'd come," Lucinda said, voice rough but steady. "I figured you wouldn't expect me to." Lucinda managed a tight smile. "I always expect things. That's my flaw." Naomi walked to the chair beside the bed. She didn't sit yet. "You sick?" "They're still running tests. But yes, something with the heart." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Fitting." Lucinda closed her eyes briefly. "You always were sharp." Naomi didn't soften. "Why am I here?" Lucinda opened her eyes again. "Because I raised you to be better than me, and that includes knowing when to walk into a room, even after it's burned down." Naomi stayed standing. "You didn't raise me," she said. "You groomed me, controlled me, then abandoned me the moment my choices didn't look like yours." Lucinda didn't deny it. "I never liked softness," she admitted. "I mistook it for weakness. And you were always soft, gentle, measured. I didn't know how to raise that. You didn't try. I regret that." Naomi stared at her. "Do you regret helping Monique steal Silas?" Lucinda swallowed hard. "Yes." That surprised her. Lucinda looked away. "I thought I was helping her win. I didn't see I was setting her up to lose everything worth keeping." Naomi pulled the chair out and sat slowly. "And me?" Lucinda's voice cracked. "I knew you'd survive. You always survive. But I didn't expect you to rise." Silence stretched between them again. Then Naomi said, "I didn't rise because of you. I rose in spite of you." Lucinda nodded. "That's fair." They sat in that room for nearly an hour. No apologies, no long explanations, just facts. And finally, space to breathe. Before Naomi stood to leave, Lucinda said, "Your father would be proud of you." Naomi paused, then nodded. "I know. I hear him in my peace." She didn't hug her, didn't promise to return. She just left. And it was enough. 2 days later, back in New York, Naomi returned to her studio. Terry greeted her with tea and a question in her eyes. Naomi simply said, "It's done." Terry nodded. "Good." That night, Naomi received a single text from Silas. "Heard you went to Baltimore. I said nothing. That was your space. Proud of you." Naomi read it once, then again. She typed, "Thank you for not crossing the line. That matters." She hit send. Silas replied a moment later. "Some lines are there to protect what's sacred. I see that now." Naomi stared at her phone, not smiling, not crying, just steady. She didn't know where this would go. With Silas, with herself, with everything that had once shattered and now sat carefully rebuilt, brick by quiet brick. But she knew this. She wasn't rushing to define anything. She wasn't afraid of second chances, but she wasn't handing them out cheaply. This time, love would be earned slowly, or not at all. And she was finally okay with that. It had been 6 days since Naomi returned from Baltimore. 6 days since she sat across from the woman who'd birthed her, but never truly saw her. And oddly, she felt lighter. Not healed, but released. There was something about not needing anything from Lucinda that closed a door quietly in her chest. No resentment, no craving. Just done. On the 7th day, Silas called. Not texted, not emailed. Called. Naomi stared at the screen when it rang. She let it buzz twice, 3 times. Then she answered. Naomi, he said, his voice steady, low. She didn't reply. I'd like to invite you to something, he continued. Not a date, not a talk, just a moment. Naomi raised an eyebrow as if he could see her. Define a moment. A walk. Nothing more. I'll be in New York this weekend for a meeting. No pressure. She waited, let the silence stretch, then said, What's changed since Baltimore? Silas didn't pause. Me. But not for you. For me. That mattered. Naomi exhaled, slow and even. Okay, she said. 1 hour. My neighborhood. Public. Agreed. They met outside her studio on Sunday afternoon. It was late November. The air was brisk but clear. Leaves danced at their feet as they fell. Naomi wore a long cream coat and gloves, her hair tied up. Silas came in black, his hands in his coat pockets, no driver trailing behind him. He looked like a man who wanted no attention. And that was new. They walked a few blocks in silence before she spoke. If you're hoping to go back to anything we used to be, stop now. I'm not, he said immediately. She nodded. Good. They turned down a quieter street lined with brownstones and trees still holding onto gold leaves. Naomi kept her pace even, measured. There's something I want you to understand, she said, eyes ahead. I didn't leave because I was hurt, she continued. I left because I refused to shrink for love again. Silas looked over at her. You never should have had to. No, but I did. And you watched. He took the words, didn't dodge. I thought standing still was being neutral. I know now. It was betrayal in a quiet suit. Naomi glanced sideways. You've always been good with words, Silas, but I'm not moved by language anymore. I'm watching behavior. You should, he said. They kept walking. They passed a playground. Children laughed in the distance. A mother shouted gently at a toddler with too much speed in his legs. Naomi smiled faintly. Silas noticed. I've thought about what you said, he said softly. That second chances aren't given. They're earned. She nodded. They are. I'm not asking for one. Naomi raised an eyebrow. No? I'm asking to be considered. She stopped walking. Faced him. What does that mean? Silas took a breath. It means I want to be near your life without pressing into it. I want to learn who you are now. I want to show up without needing anything in return. And if after that you still want me around, then I'll be grateful. Naomi searched his face. He wasn't selling anything. Not confidence. Not charm. Not apologies. Just presence. Finally, she said, one condition. He nodded. Name it. No lies, she said. Not even the ones you tell yourself. Silas's eyes didn't waver. Understood. Naomi turned and kept walking. They didn't talk much after that. They walked a few more blocks, stopped for tea at a tiny corner shop, spoke about nothing, a recipe she tried, a book he read, the way New York trains were always late. No history, no drama, just now. And when they reached her block again, she stopped at her stoop. This is where I leave you, she said. Silas nodded. Thank you for the walk. She looked at him, really looked. You know I don't trust you yet, right? Yes. And that I may never love you the same again? He smiled, soft and sure. I'm not asking for the same love. I'm asking for a new one, earned, not assumed. She stepped inside without another word. But this time, she didn't close the door too fast. She left it cracked, just enough. The next time Silas reached out, he didn't text. He sent a calendar invite. Subject, Saturday morning. Harlem Art Center Community Day location, East 100. And 17th Street. Open lot behind the mural wall note, no speeches. Just show up. Kids need supplies sorted. Naomi hovered over the notification for a moment, then clicked, accept. No questions, no conditions. She would show up. Nothing more. The art center was already buzzing when she arrived. Children ran in circles with chalk in their hands. A jazz trio played under a small tent. Volunteers stacked crates of books, paints, brushes, and blankets into giveaway tables. Naomi wore jeans, a black hoodie, and her curls tied back. No designer coat, no audience, just her. She spotted Silas near the tables, sleeves rolled, clipboard in hand. He wasn't giving orders. He was lifting boxes, joking with teenagers. Stepping aside when the lead coordinator barked instructions. No spotlight. Naomi felt something shift. She joined the paint station, organizing supplies with a quiet rhythm. A young girl named Rain tugged at her sleeve and asked if purple could be a skin tone. Naomi smiled. Absolutely. It's your world. Paint it how it feels. The girl beamed and dipped her brush into the deepest violet. Hours passed like minutes. Lunch was served in paper trays under folding chairs. Silas passed Naomi a plate. No comment, no hover. They ate side by side, the way people do when they're used to each other's quiet. At the end of the day, she helped sweep. He stacked the chairs, and when the sun started to fall behind the buildings, they both stood with their backs to the wall, watching children draw stick figures on the cracked pavement. "You looked comfortable today," Silas said softly. Naomi kept her eyes forward. "I was. You used to get anxious around crowds. I don't anymore." "Why?" "Because I stopped trying to belong and just started showing up." Silas nodded, slow and thoughtful. "That makes sense." A pause. Then Naomi asked, "Why'd you invite me?" Silas didn't hesitate. "Because you belonged here long before I ever did." They didn't walk home together. She waved once. He nodded once. The following Monday, Naomi returned to her studio with quiet energy. Terry noticed. "Your skin looks good," she said playfully. "What'd you do this weekend?" Naomi smirked. "Painted with kids. Got chalk on my sneakers." Terry blinked. "That's code for, I saw Silas, isn't it?" Naomi didn't answer, didn't deny it. She simply said, "I saw consistency." Terry didn't press. She knew better. Later that week, Silas sent her a book. No flowers, no notes. Just a hardbound copy of The Things We Don't Say by Annalise DeWitt. Inside, he'd underlined a single passage. "Some people show love with grand gestures. Others just keep showing up, over and over, until you realize they never left." Naomi read it twice, then placed the book on her desk. She didn't reach out. She didn't need to. This wasn't a race to reconciliation. It was a slow, quiet reintroduction, one that asked nothing but offered everything. 1 week later, Silas stood at the doorway of her studio, not inside, not invasive, just present. Naomi looked up from her desk. "You're early." He held up coffee and a paper bag. "I brought the wrong order. Thought you might want it." "What is it?" "Lavender tea, 1 sugar, and almond croissant." Naomi eyed him. "You remembered?" "I tried not to forget." She held his gaze for a beat, then nodded toward the second chair by her work table. "Sit down." Quietly. He did, and for the next hour, they didn't talk about the past. They just worked, in silence, together, and in that stillness, something returned. Not trust, not love, but space. The kind you offer only when you're no longer afraid to be seen. Naomi never let him pick the place. Every time they met, if you could call it that, she chose the location, the time, and the pace. And Silas never argued. He showed up, sat where she asked, ordered only after she did. It was their unspoken rule. Her space, her rhythm, her rules. This time, she picked a small lunch spot in Crown Heights. Tucked away behind a row of florists, it had no sign, just a cracked, black awning and the scent of roasted garlic leaking into the street. She arrived early. He arrived on time. They sat in the corner by the window, menus in hand. But Naomi didn't open hers. She looked at him directly, not with hesitation, not with softness, with clarity. "I'm not rebuilding anything I didn't break," she said. Silas nodded. "I don't expect you to." I'm not here to relive anything either. I'm not asking you to. She finally opened her menu. They ordered. She chose mushroom risotto with lemon zest. He asked for tomato soup and sourdough toast. It was quiet for a while. Then she spoke again. I lost myself once. For you. Silas's jaw flexed. He stayed silent. I stopped saying what I needed because I didn't want to sound ungrateful. I let silence eat away at me because I thought peace meant obedience. But I was wrong. He raised his eyes. I know you were. That's why I'm listening now. Naomi shook her head. No. That's why I'm watching. The food arrived. The waiter poured water. They ate without fanfare. Then Naomi placed her fork down, hands in her lap. I don't want to build a new version of the old thing, she said. I want something different, real. No performances, no protection. Silas leaned forward. What does that look like, for you? She tilted her head. It looks like someone who doesn't flinch when I'm strong. Someone who doesn't retreat when I'm quiet. Someone who doesn't treat my boundaries like invitations to negotiate. Silas met her gaze. I can do that. Naomi narrowed her eyes. I'm not asking what you can do. I'm asking what you will do. When no one is watching. After lunch, they stepped out into the afternoon light. The street buzzed, but they moved slowly, intentionally. Naomi stopped by the florist stand and picked up a small potted plant. Lavender. Calming. Grounded. Still growing. Silas reached for his wallet. Naomi held up a hand. I'll get this. He stepped back. They kept walking. 2 blocks later, she paused. I'm not in love with you, she said. Not anymore. Silas nodded. I know, and I don't know if I'll ever be. I understand. Naomi's tone didn't change. But I respect what you're doing. I see it. Silas's voice lowered. I'm not rushing. I'm not assuming. Good, she said. Because the only way this works is if we both stay honest, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's inconvenient. He nodded again. Then she handed him the lavender plant. He blinked. For me? For your space. To remind you what patience smells like. Silas cradled the pot like it held something fragile. Thank you. Naomi nodded once, then turned and walked the other way. That evening, Silas placed the lavender on his kitchen counter, next to the espresso machine, across from the window where the sun hit mid-morning. He didn't water it right away. He just stood there, staring at it, breathing it in, learning its stillness. Tuesday afternoon, Naomi met with Olivia Yu, a former client turned quiet confidant, on the roof of a midtown gallery Naomi had redesigned a year ago. The rooftop space, once a barren concrete slab, was now an open-air garden cafe with minimalist benches and low wooden planters. Naomi's touch was still present in every corner. They sat beneath a pergola, draped in climbing jasmine. Naomi sipped mint tea. Olivia nursed her iced espresso and watched her carefully. So, Olivia began, what's going on with your... She paused, waved her hand in the air. Naomi didn't flinch. With Silas? Olivia smirked. Yes. The man. The moment. The former heartbreak. Naomi leaned back. We're walking. Talking. Slowly. And nothing's defined. He knows I'm not offering love. Just space. Olivia arched a brow. Space is healthy, but isolation dressed in healing robes, that's another story. Naomi blinked. What are you saying? I'm saying it's one thing to guard your peace. It's another to build walls so high no one can reach you, not even someone earning their way back. Naomi didn't respond immediately. She hated when Olivia did that. Asked the one question she hadn't asked herself. Boundaries are good, Olivia continued. But sometimes they stop being fences and start becoming prisons. You don't need to lock out the world to stay free. Naomi looked down at her tea. I'm not ready to feel everything again. You don't have to feel everything. Just feel something. That night, Naomi walked through her apartment in silence. Books untouched. Candle unlit. The lavender plant from her earlier walk sat on her table, breathing quietly in its little ceramic pot. She stood by the window and thought about Olivia's words. Maybe she wasn't running anymore, but she wasn't staying either. She was hovering, half present, half healed. And Silas? He hadn't asked for more. He hadn't pushed once. He simply met her where she was and stayed there. Across town, Silas sat in his own apartment. The lavender she gave him had started to bloom, tiny purple petals stretching toward the window light. He poured himself a drink, then did something rare. He picked up his phone, opened a blank note, and began to write. Things I'm relearning. Not every silence is rejection. Not every no means forever. Trust doesn't return when you show up. It returns when you stay. He paused, then added one more. The woman I hurt is no longer the woman I'm standing beside. She's someone wiser, stronger. If I want a place in her world, I'll need to deserve the new version of her, not mourn the old. He saved it, didn't send it, didn't screenshot it, just kept it. Because not all growth needed witnesses. 2 days later, Naomi received a small white envelope in the mail. No name, no card, just a handwritten quote clipped from a worn paperback. And in the places where I used to ache, I now bloom. Taped below it was a line of pressed lavender. No return address, but she knew. Naomi adjusted her silk blouse in the mirror for the 3rd time. Not because she doubted how she looked, but because it had been so long since she cared how he might see her. The invitation had arrived last week, a curated industry night in Midtown, hosted by the Journal of Urban Design. Black tie optional, wine and soft jazz guaranteed. Normally she'd skip it. But this time, she said yes, because the event was honoring a project she'd worked on in South Harlem, because people would ask if she didn't show up, and because Silas would be there. He was listed as a guest panelist. She touched the lapel of her dark blazer and took a slow breath. Tonight wasn't about confrontation or clarity. It was about presence, showing up without hiding, without shrinking. The gallery buzzed with soft music and murmured introductions. People floated between exhibits of architectural models, hanging renderings, and framed sustainability reports. Naomi stepped inside and was greeted almost immediately. Naomi, you look radiant. Finally. The woman behind the East, 118th redesign. We were just talking about your clean lines and humane layouts. She smiled, gracious, focused, grounded. Then she saw him. Across the room, charcoal suit, no tie, clean cut, stillness in his shoulders. Silas stood beside an architect she recognized but hadn't worked with. He hadn't noticed her yet, but she didn't look away. When he turned and saw her, he didn't move, just met her eyes. No smirk, no hesitation. His gaze said, I see you, and I'll wait for your permission. She gave a slow nod. That was all. Later, during the panel discussion, Naomi sat in the 3rd row. Silas took the mic after a young woman presented a complex, mixed-income housing project. He didn't speak like a man selling his name. He spoke like a man who'd learned to listen. I think, Silas said slowly, the mistake we make, especially in positions of power, is assuming that our timelines matter more than the communities we enter. But healing, urban or personal, doesn't respond to blueprints. It responds to respect. People murmured their agreement. But Naomi just sat there, silent, stunned. She'd waited so long for an apology. Maybe this was one. Or maybe it didn't need to be. Afterward, she stepped out onto the side terrace. A breeze caught her sleeve. A beat later, she heard his steps, measured, close. He didn't speak right away. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, gaze on the skyline. Nice speech, she said. Thanks, he replied. Didn't know you'd be here. You did. He half smiled. Okay, I hoped. They stood in the quiet. Then she turned to him. I'm not angry anymore, Silas. He met her eyes. But that doesn't mean I forgot what it took to get here. I don't want you to forget, he said. I want you to remember everything, and still know that I'm here now. Not to fix anything, just to walk with you if you'll let me. She looked away, heart pounding. Then, do you know the difference between love and control? She asked. His brow furrowed. What? Love says, I trust you'll find your way. Control says, you won't, so I'll decide for you. Silas nodded. And I did the latter. You did. They were quiet again. Finally, she added, I don't know if there's room for us, Silas. Not yet. He didn't flinch. I'm not here for a door. I'm here for the hallway. That made her blink. I'll stay there, he added, voice lower now. As long as it takes, even if you never open the door again. Naomi stepped back. Not to leave, but to breathe. She'd never felt more seen. And less rushed. Later that night, she returned to her apartment and found the lavender blooming wider. Fragrant, soft, alive. She picked up her journal, wrote one sentence. He didn't chase me. He honored me. Naomi didn't sleep much that night. Not because her mind was spinning with doubt, but because something had shifted. For the first time in years, the silence in her apartment wasn't cold. It felt kind. She watered the small plant Silas had left on her porch weeks ago. The soil had stayed damp, like someone had been tending to it. She didn't call him, didn't text. She simply lived through the next few days. Ran her design firm, met with clients, ate dinner at the table instead of the couch. The absence of chaos was new, but it wasn't boring. It was calm. It was hers. A week later, a letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A real letter, handwritten, in clean block print, no return address. But she knew who it was from before she even opened it. It read, Naomi, I've been thinking about what you said, about love versus control. You were right. I thought if I gave you enough, shelter, money, plans, you'd feel safe enough to stay. But I never asked if you wanted to stay. I didn't know how to trust what I couldn't manage, and I hurt you with that. If you never respond, I'll understand. I just wanted you to know you were never the chaos. I was, and I'm learning now, without needing you to witness it. I hope your peace roars louder than my silence ever did. Silas. Naomi read it twice, and smiled. Not because it fixed everything, not because she suddenly wanted to run into his arms, but because this was a man who had stopped trying to win. He had chosen to grow, quietly, privately, without needing applause. That evening, she packed a small tote and walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. The air was crisp, sky pink with early spring. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She just went. To the Brooklyn Promenade. The place she once told Silas about on their 3rd date. She had called it her invisible reset button. She found a bench, sat down, watched the skyline, felt the air in her lungs, the stillness in her bones. And then she turned. Silas was there, standing a respectful distance away. No assumptions, no steps forward. She hadn't told him she'd be here, but maybe some part of her knew he would be. They held each other's gaze. No need to speak yet. After several minutes, Naomi rose, took slow steps toward him. She stopped 2 feet away. "You're not the man I left," she said. "I know," he replied. "I liked him, but I couldn't stay with him." Silas's voice was low. "I didn't know how to let you love me without proving I was worth it." She smiled gently. "That's the thing. You never had to prove it. You just had to be still." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded paper, held it out. "I wrote you something too, but I didn't send it." She took it, unfolded it. It was a sketch, a house, not extravagant, just warm. Her name was written across the bottom corner, not Naomi King, Just Naomi. He pointed to the front steps of the drawing. They're wide, he said. No pressure to enter. Just space to sit if you want. Her throat tightened. Then she said the one thing that changed everything. Can we start with the porch? He smiled, relieved. Careful. I'd like that. They didn't kiss, didn't hold hands. They just walked along the promenade, side by side. Not as a couple, not yet, but as two people who chose healing over hurry, peace over pride, and love on no one's timeline but their own. Naomi never moved back in with Silas. Not right away. They dated again. Slowly. One coffee, one dinner, one conversation at a time. They built something stronger, not perfect, but honest. And this time, they built it together. No pressure, no promises, just presence. She didn't rush back. He didn't chase. And somehow, they found their way. Have you ever needed someone to stop performing and just be real? This wasn't a story of grand gestures. It was about quiet accountability, small consistencies, real peace. Do you think love grows stronger after pain, when both people heal? Tell us what part of Naomi and Silas's story stayed with you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Charles' Stories. Because love, when it's real, always deserves a second look.